Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Defazzio, and I am the President and CEO of Circle of Friends Services. Circle of Friends Services is a community, not-for-profit outpatient mental health agency in Central Florida, and we provide services to children and families in the child welfare system. And in recent years, we have begun to provide services to children and families going through the adoption process. Mostly because we have discovered over the years that many adoptions do not succeed, not because the children are not prepared to be adopted, but because adoptive parents may have some unrealistic expectations about what their children are going to do once they are adopted. So today we are going to talk about one of the most common questions that adoptive parents ask our therapists. And we're going to talk about ways that adoptive parents can fix that issue. Most of our adoptive parents come into our services and say, why does my child act like this? Why is my child so distractible? Why is my child so hyperactive? Why does my child not do well in school? Why does my child seem so detached and disconnected from me when I am here and ready to provide a wonderful home for this child? And the most important thing that adoptive parents say to the therapist or myself is, I didn't act like this when I was his age. My own biological children do not act like this when they were his age. So we're going to try to help adoptive parents to understand in this brief discussion what happens to the brain of a traumatized child. Most children who are adopted in the American foster care system come through the child welfare system. If you have a child that was adopted from another country, we may discuss that in a different video, but what we're talking about today are children who have come into the American foster care system, have experienced early childhood neglect and abuse, probably have gone through multiple foster placements before they come into your home. What has happened to the brain of that child? What we know, and we know this through very solid research, is that early trauma affects the child's developing brain. So if your child has gone through early trauma in the first 5 years of life, 85% of everything that child learns, he learns in the first 5 years of life. So if those early years were developmentally delayed, if those early years were the subject of abuse and severe trauma, that child's developing brain is going to be affected. I have a little model of the brain here, and I use it to explain to young children what's going on in their brain, because kids need to understand what's happening with them. And what I always explain to children is that this part of your brain right here is the thinking part of your brain. It's this part of your brain. It's the brain that prepares you to learn in school and to sit and understand what people are saying to you. And if you have grown up in very difficult circumstances, this part of your brain is probably not very well developed. What is well developed is the middle part of your brain. And what happens in the middle part of a child's brain, one of our leading neuropsychologists calls it the smoke detector of the brain. Bessel van der Kolk, who's a leading psychologist in this field, refers to the midbrain as the smoke detector of the brain, because in that mid part of your brain, all of your child's early traumas, all of your child's early frightening experiences get stored there, and they're very easily activated. And once that midbrain is activated with all those fear factors, all of that distractibility, the child's thinking part of your brain is going to, his or her brain is going to go offline. Now, what is that going to look like in your child? Say you adopt a 10-year-old, and that 10-year-old came into foster care when he was 2, went through multiple placements, went back home, was with a mom who was perhaps drug addicted, who did not attend to his needs, comes back into foster care, goes through multiple placements. That child has never really had the development of the front thinking part of his brain that a child growing up in normal circumstances would have. So when you get your 10-year-old and your 10-year-old begins to do very poorly in school, and you say, honey, I know you can do this. I know you can do well in geography. I know you can do well in arithmetic. Maybe he can't right now. So what does this mean for you as adoptive parents? Does this mean your adoption has failed? No. Does this mean that your adoption is abnormal? Not at all. What you are experiencing with your child is what most adoptive parents experience, that this is a child who does have some deficits in the development of the cognitive parts of his brain, the parts of his brain that allow him to understand and learn and grow and develop concepts. It is we call it the executive functioning of the brain, but it's the thinking part of the brain. So what does this mean for you as adoptive parents? What this means is that you are part of the remediation of your child's brain. One good thing about children's brains is that they are very, very plastic, and they can grow and form and improve with your help. Do you have to be a scientist to do this? Do you have to be a PhD? You don't at all. What you have to do as adoptive parents is to provide the deficit learning that these kids did not have. You have to say to your child, I am here as a consistent, kind, caring person, and I'm always going to be here. And if I tell you I'm going to read you a book on Wednesday night, I'm going to read you a book. And if I tell you that I'm going to give you spaghetti on Tuesday, I'm going to give you spaghetti on Tuesday. Now, does that seem very simple? It's very simple. But what does it do for your child? What it does for your child is prove to him that you are going to be there, that you are going to help him, that you are going to make him feel safe. And once children feel safe, the thinking part of their brain reactivates, and you can then help them to learn. But I'm telling you, you must lower your expectations for what this child can accomplish when he walks in the door. You must stop saying you need to be a Rhodes Scholar. You need to be able to say, I'm going to accept you where you are, and I'm going to try to help you learn that you can develop into a good, kind, thinking person, because I'm right here behind you. Is this difficult? It is not difficult, but I will tell you that it takes time. And I always say to adoptive parents, if a child took 10 years to get this way, it's not going to turn around in 10 days. You need to give them some time. You need to let that front part of their brain start to fill in. You need to support that front part of their brain. And that doesn't mean you have to sit down and tutor them every night. What it really means is that you need to make them feel safe so that the midbrain calms down, the thinking brain comes back online, and your child will be what you want your child to be. But lower your expectations, let your child meet you where he is, and you will find that you will have a very successful adoptive placement. Thank you for your time, and I wish you well in your adoption.